Oh, yeah. All right. We are going back to Louis L'Amour, starting with chapter 2 today. We got through chapter 1 yesterday. Was it yesterday? It doesn't feel like it. But first things first, traditions. Traditions. What's that great quote about tradition? Tradition is not the celebration. I forget what. All right. Hold on. Hold on. Here we go. We're just going to add this tab. We're going to share my tab with everybody. And I'm not going to speak this time. We're just going to let Scott do his thing. Everybody, get your beverages ready here. I've got an assortment of beverages. Get ready for a simultaneous sip and about to have the best stream ever.
Hey, everybody. It's time. It's time for Coffee with Scott Adams, the best time of every single day. No doubt about it, the argument is over. It's just the best time. And today, I have for you, look at these notes. Yeah, content. Good content for the first time. It's going to be the best content you've ever heard, and all you need to enjoy it to its maximum potential is a cup or a mug or a glass, a tankard, Chelsea stein, a canteen, jug, or a flask, a vessel of any kind. Fill it with your favorite liquid. I like coffee. And join me now for the unparalleled pleasure, the dopamine hit of the day, the thing that makes everything better. It's called the simultaneous sip, and it's going to rock the entire world like a 5.8 earthquake in California. Go.
Thanks, buddy. All right, we're reading Louis L'Amour, Kiowa Trail. We let off at the end of chapter 1. At the end of chapter 1, we had just gotten introduced to our main characters, Con Dury, Kate Lundy, her brother Tom Lundy, and there were some shady characters that were around the town. Yeah. All right. And there was a young girl that had come from a restaurant or something, and Tom, Kate's brother, fell instantly in love at first sight. He's trying to hook up with her. She's from the other side of town that he's not allowed to go to because he's like a cowboy or whatever. And this rich guy who's her dad is a real jerk, and I don't think he likes cowboys very much. Okay. Todd Malloy and Red Mike were loitering on the edge of the walk near the Emporium. They got up as I came near. Todd was 22 and had been punching cows on Texas range since he was 14. He and Tom Lundy rode as saddle partners. Red Mike was a tough hand, a good man with a rope and with any kind of stock. He was also a very good man with a gun, and he didn't care. Con? Mike asked roughly. Are they going to make trouble for that boy? I'll talk to John Blake. He won't take any talk. You know how he is, Con. With him, a rule is a rule. I'll handle him. Well, Mike said, if anybody can, you can. Not that way, I said irritably. This mustn't run into gun trouble. So you sit tight. If you need us, Mike, we'll be here. And sober. John Blake was in the Bon Ton. When I walked in the door, he took the bottle from the bar and reached over for a couple of glasses. Together, we walked to a back table and sat down. You sold your beef? Kate's taking a Hardeman. Blake filled 2 glasses. Con, do me a favor. When you get your money, pull out. Kate's the boss. We move when she says we move. She'll listen to you. Maybe. Con, you've got a tough crew, and I know some of your boys. I know them in Abilene and in Ellsworth, and I know when to expect trouble. When a crew like yours isn't drinking, there's something wrong. I want to know what it is. Were you ever in love, John? I mean, when you were a kid, he looked startled. Come to think of it, I think it was the only time I ever saw John Blake startled by anything. He was suddenly embarrassed, too. Hell, everybody's been in love, or thought he was, which amounts to the same thing. John touched his mustache with a finger and studied me, so I put it to him straight, right across the board. John, Tom Lundy's going north of the street tonight. His face stiffened, and his eyes became like marbles. No, he said, I will not permit it. There are other ways to look, John. You don't have to see it happen, and there'll be no trouble. You don't know what you're talking about. Hell, if I'd guessed that was the kind of trouble was, I'd Tom Lundy's Kate's brother, John. Tom Lundy's Kate's brother, John. He's one of the very best. He's no wild kid. He's hard working. He's serious. And he's a boy who's going to do well in the world. Believe me, any girl who wouldn't be interested in him would be off her head. Have you ever met Aaron McDonald? No. Well, meet him. You'll see what I mean. He's a hard man and a rigid man. There's no giving him anywhere, and there's only black or white so far as he's concerned. He's a witch burner. I don't get you. A witch burner? Like those people back in the old days? This is a man who could pass sentence and light the fires himself. Yet in his way, he's a good, solid citizen. He was against hiring me, but he's pleased because since they hired me, he there's been no trouble in town, and everybody from the Texas crowd has stayed south of the street. He's helped raise money for the church, and before we had a preacher, he spoke from the pulpit. He's a hell of a damnation man, and one of his sermons was about Texas men. He's rabid on the subject. That and making money. How does he figure to make money if he doesn't cater to the cattlemen? Hell, Con, where else can cattlemen go? This is the best shipping point. And McDonald and his crowd know it. And remember this, he isn't alone. Two-thirds of the town stand right with him. Talcott, Brayley, Carpenter, and all that crowd. Talcott came west with McDonald, and so did Barley. They can muster 40 men to stand against you, perhaps more. There will be no trouble with Tom unless somebody else makes it. He thinks he's found the girl he's been dreaming about, and maybe he has. He hasn't. Something in his tone made me look right at him. Care to make that clear? John Blake's pale, hard face colored a mite. I'm not one to talk about a woman. Did this boy tell you what she said? We heard it, Kate and me. She didn't say to come. She didn't say not to come. So you see. What? She's in the clear. John Blake shifted in his seat and leaned his thick forearms on the table. Con, I'd not want these words repeated, but that girl's going to get somebody killed. In fact, that may be what she has in mind. You're crazy, I said. It was a foolish idea. I'd seen the girl, and she was as much of a lady as a man would care to see. Nothing flighty about her, and no question about it. She was lovely. Maybe a little cool, but that kind sometimes are the most passionate, sometimes the most affectionate. I've seen the girl, John, I added. Don't take me wrong, there's never been a word against her. She doesn't go riding out with young men and get herself talked about. Why, I can count the times on my fingers when she's even walked down the street with a young man. We were getting nowhere, and Kate might need me to talk to Hardman, although she never had. Kate was a shrewd businesswoman, and no nonsense about her. In her own way, Kate could be as tough or as hard as any man. She had to be. And that's just the trouble. What? Look, Con, here's a mighty pretty girl. She's 20 years old, although I don't think she admits to it. This here is a country where most girls marry at 16 or 18, and believe me, she's had chances. Like I've said, She doesn't go riding with them. She doesn't walk out with them. She invites them home or lets them believe they were invited. So then her father sends him away. Hmm, it's kind of weird. Oh, excuse me. Sorry, guys. Get comfortable here. So her dad sends these suitors away. Sounds like a real sweetheart. It made no kind of sense to me, and I said as much. John Blake pushed his hat back on his head, then took it off and put it on the table beside him. Maybe I'm not making myself clear. The point is, I don't think she wants to get married, and I think she likes to have her father send these men away. And he does. Oh, believe me, he does. Blake paused, and then he said, Con, I don't know whether this makes sense to you or not, but I think she hates men. That is weird. Right then, I began to wish Kate Landry was here. When it comes to cattle, horses, or men, I can handle them. I know all about them, but I've never had much luck with the women. Give me a good old fist fight, knuckle and skull in the street, and I'll handle my share. Or I'll take a herd over a bad trail and bring them through in as good a shape as any man. That doesn't make sense. Blake tossed off his drink. Con, if you'd ever spent life dealing with trail town people the way I've done, you'd find a lot of things don't make sense. You talk to that boy, you tell him about her, and keep him south of the street. And if I can't, then I'll have to stop him myself. There it was, laid right on the line. This isn't a challenge, John. You can look the other way for once. Just don't see him. Let the boy get over there and find out for himself, and let him get back. Then we'll ride out of town, and there'll be an end to it. He looked at me. You think it's that easy? Break that rule once, just once, and there's no more rule. I'd be in a shooting every night of the week all during the season. If one man can go over, why can't they all? We sat there knowing our talk was over, and we'd gotten nowhere. Yet we were reluctant to get up and walk away because we both knew that when we did, the bars were down and trouble was smoking. John, I'm asking you, look the other way. I can't. And if I could, McDonald wouldn't. Believe me, Con, there's no give to that man. He's like iron. My mouth was dry and my hands felt awkward and empty on the table before me. The whiskey was there, but I'd no wish for it. Liquor never solved any problem, nor did it make a problem more simple. John, if the kid goes north of the street, he looked at me, those cold eyes, colder still. If he goes north of the street, what? I'll back him, John. For a long minute, we looked across the table at each other, and each knew what that moment meant. John Blake was a trail town marshal whose reputation depended on fearlessness. He was a good man with a gun, but a man who used one sparingly. He never threatened, never swaggered, never laid a hand on a gun unless to draw it, and never drew unless to shoot. And he never shot unless to kill. And in the course of 15 years as a shotgun guard on Wells Fargo stages and marshal of cow towns, John Blake had killed 11 men. None of them had been drunks or reputation seeking youngsters. There were other ways of handling them. As for myself, John Blake knew enough about me to understand what the decision might mean. There had been a time, although I had never asked for such a reputation, when it was said that I was a faster man than Wes Harden and the most dangerous man alive. I shall regret that, he said simply, and I knew the man well enough to know he meant it. Tom Lundy is the son I'd like to have had. I said, although I'm scarcely old enough to be his father. He nodded, acknowledging that it was high praise. After a minute, he said, can you keep your boys out of it, Con? I've heard talk of men treeing a western town, but you know, and I know, that it never happened. It never could happen in a town where 70% of the town's citizens are war veterans and 90% have fought Indians. Aaron McDonald now, don't underestimate a man. Underestimate. Don't underrate the man. Sorry, guys. Couldn't get that one past my teeth. He's a cold fish, and he's got nerve. And if he thought I'd need it, he would back me with 50 rifles, every man jack of them a dead shot. He looked at me. You've 15 men, I think. He was right, of course. If the boys insisted upon backing Tom, there would be a slaughter. The town would suffer, but our boys would be shot to doll rags. I'll see what I can do. The bartender watched me leave, and I could see the worry on the man's face. He had a family here, and when shooting started, there was no telling who might get hurt. Out on the street, I stood for a minute in the sunlight. There was only one thing to it, of course. I'd have to pull the crew out of town. We'd have to move the herd. Kay was at the motel when I walked in, and I knew she had heard something. We went to a quiet corner of the big, almost empty lobby and sat down. What did he say? No give to him, Kate, but I see his point. He doesn't dare open the door even a crack. And then I told her what John Blake had said about Linda McDonald. It doesn't make sense to me, Kate. Why would a girl do a thing like that? So Linda McDonald must, yeah, that's the young, pretty girl that is leading our young hero on. Why would a girl do a thing like that? Kate was silent, and I waited for Kate. Despite all her surface hardness, was an understanding woman with a lot of savvy where people were concerned. She may hate men and she may love her father. I don't get you. Sometimes, often without knowing it, a girl measures all men by her father. She may enjoy seeing him run them off, and to her it may be a way of continually proving her father's superiority. Kate, how do we stand with Hardman? He's offered $22 a head, but I think he'll go 25. Take it, Kate. Let's get out of here. She looked at me quickly. Is it that bad? I've told him I'd back Tom. That means if Tom goes the other side of the street, I'm going with him. And you'd fight Blake? It may come to that. She got to her feet. I'll see Hardman. She turned to go, then stopped. Tom, Tom will listen to you, Con. See him. Tell him how foolish this all is. All right. 1 second, guys. I gotta clear my throat. I'm gonna put you on mute. Okay. So this guy, young guy Tom, is gonna go see that girl, and our main character Con here is gonna back him. Sounds like he's gonna get into a shooting match. And this boss lady, Kate, she's trying to tap dance her way through it all. Continuing on, we're on page 17 here, still in chapter 2. I think chapter 2 is almost over. And we're not going to take any breaks yet, but we are going to take a sip of coffee. If you're listening to this now or in the future, go ahead and take a sip of coffee. What did I see there? If you have coffee, unless you have some other beverage. Yeah, chapter 3 doesn't start till page 27, so we got another 10 pages to read before chapter 3. Whew. Hmm. Okay. As I walked along the street, I realized how serious it had become. It was much more than a boy going uptown to see a girl, for there was bad blood remaining from the war between the states. 9 of my boys had fought in the Confederate Army, and most of the others had relatives who had. All of them but one were from Texas. One man and myself. In a sense, it seemed that I was from Texas too, but for my parents were buried there, and it had been my home longer than anywhere else. Along the street in the saloons, the gambling houses and the stores, and the livery stable were men who had fought with the Union, or had been, as I knew MacDonald had been, rabid abolitionists. John Blake himself had been a scout for the Union Army. It's pretty badass. Those Civil War veterans were hardcore mother effers. No choice. The Texas trail drivers were, for the most part, uninterested in what lay north of the street. In each trail town, excuse me, in each trail town there was such a division that it received unspoken acceptance. The cowhands came to town to have a wild time, and a wild time belonged in the saloons and the houses of the line. Each man understood that each man understood that and regarded it as no slight to be kept south of the street. John Blake's rule was a reasonable one, and nobody but an occasional belligerent drunk felt called upon to question it. The case of Tom Lundy was something quite different. Tom was the younger brother of the boss, but he was also the younger brother of every man on the outfit, even those close to his own age. He was a gentleman, and he had always conducted himself as one. He rode the wildest of the bucking horses. He was a top hand with a rope. He worked right along with the hands and drew the same wages. And while filled with a reckless, devil take the hindmost attitude when in the saddle, he was always a gentleman. He didn't drink, and no man in the outfit would have offered him a drink. You live that kind of a life, you're going to have a real good reputation. To deny Tom Lundy the right to go north of the street to call on a girl was a direct insult to every man on the Tumbling Bee. That was the name of their brand of cattle. The bitter feelings left over from the war rankled. Even in Texas, the Davis police force had treated the Texans like second class citizens, and the resentment burned deep. John Blake knew what that meant, and he also knew the men of our crew. Every man of them was a veteran of dozens of minor or major gun battles with Indians or outlaws, or of trail town squabbles. The town might defeat them. The town might defeat them, might even wipe them out, but other men would die before that happened. Getting up into the saddle, I rode out toward the herd. Tom saw me and came riding my way. He was over 6 feet, as tall as I was, in fact, and he weighed only a little bit less. Seeing him come toward me, I felt a sharp pang of regret for the son I'd never have. Sure, I was only 35, but there was only one woman I wanted, and she was the one I couldn't have. Is he talking about Kate or somebody else? Hey, Con. He swung his horse alongside mine. Can't somebody else take over? I want to go to town. I can't let you go, Tom. His face hardened a little. What's the matter? Are you afraid of John Blake? The minute he said it, he was sorry. I could see it in his eyes, but I felt the old tightness inside of me at the word. It was something you did not say to a gun carrying man in those days. But I was old enough to carry it off. Or was I? I'm not afraid of him, Tom, and you know damn well I'm not. But if you go north of the street tonight, somebody's going to get killed. Hell, I'm not afraid. I didn't say you were, nor did I say it would be you who'd get killed. Words were never my way, and I wasn't handy with 'em. Somehow, I could never dab a loop on the right phrase, though it wasn't as if I hadn't mingled with folks and hadn't known how to talk. Kid, if you go north of the street tonight, I said, All hell's going to break loose. Believe me, McDonald won't stand for it. Oh, Con, I can slip in there, see that girl, and get away before anybody knows it. She doesn't really want to see it, Tom. He didn't believe it, of course, and I should have known he wouldn't. She was the girl he wanted, and the idea that she might not want to see him was unthinkable. It was simply not to be believed. So I laid it on the line to him, talking as reasonably as I could, and I told him what John Blake had said. I don't believe it. Don't say that. Don't say that where John Blake can hear you. The hell with him. Everybody's always talking about John Blake. What's he got? Four hands or something? He doesn't need four hands, Tom. Take it from me. He seemed to be seeing me for the first time, and I knew suddenly that whatever place I'd had in the respect of Tom Lundy, I had just lost it. That's bad. Death is only a word when you are his age. Death is only a word when you're his age. And as much as Tom had seen, he had never seen good men die in a dusty street over a trifle. He had fought in Indian battles, but he had never actually seen a gun battle involving someone he knew and liked. John Blake was a good man doing a necessary job, and I didn't want to kill John Blake. Neither did I want to risk being killed over something like this. All right, he said impatiently. You've told me. Don't go, Tom. Don't even think of going. You think I'm scared? There it was again. At his age, it meant so much to prove one wasn't scared. I knew how he felt because it had not been too long since I had known the same thoughts. And to some extent, I still did. It isn't only you, Tom. It's the outfit. Khan is thinking about bigger things. Tom is not thinking about other things other than himself. He just wants that girl. And I completely understand. Hell, Con, we could take this town apart. The Tumbling Bee could rope and hog tie this town. Tom, you see that man with the beard? The one sweeping off the walk? That's George Darrow. In 2 years of buffalo hunting, he killed over 2,000 buffalo. During that time, he had 7 Indian fights. And before that, he fought through the war. The man who is just now walking up to him is one of the finest rifle shots in the West. It's men like them you'd have to fight. Tom Lundy had nothing to say to that, but his jaw set stubbornly, and I knew he was thinking. He was proud of our outfit, and we had just brought a herd through the rough country, fighting Indians all the way, and short-handed the last part of it. He did not like to admit that anything was impossible for the Tumbling Bee. Everybody take a sip. All righty. Where was I? Here we are. Nothing was impossible for the Tumbling Bee. Also, he feared Linda McDonald would believe him a loudmouth if he failed to call. Oh, yes, thinking about his woman. As we would say in the business, he's got one-itis, destined to fail, unfortunately. It's a funny twist of fate. You will never be happy until you are happy with what you have. That is not to dissuade or to demotivate or disenfranchise. There's a word I can't think of. Or to dissuade. That is not to dissuade anyone, but it is still true. The duality of man, such as life. C'est la vie. Also, he feared Linda McDonald would believe him a loudmouth if he failed to call. He had no way of judging the buried animosities that lay hidden between the trail crew and the people of this town. I don't want to start a fight, Con. When have I ever? All I want to do is go see a girl. What's so wrong about that? Nothing. Nothing at all. Except that nobody wants a cattleman north of the street. It's John Blake's job to see that none of them do. No exceptions. The disgust on his face was obvious, and I didn't much blame him. But neither did I see any reason to get a few men killed over such a thing. Finally, he said, "Is it all right if I ride with you when you go back? I'd, I'd better see her and tell her I'm not coming." Well, what could I say? I agreed, figuring he would use good judgment. But I was worried as much about some of the others as I was about him. Delgado was in town, and he was not hot-headed, but Rule Carson was, and a wrong word could precipitate a gun battle. The whole outfit felt insulated in the person of Tom Lundy, and in a way, I didn't blame him. Oh, excuse me. The whole outfit felt insulted in the person of Tom Lundy, and in a way, I didn't blame him. But it was up to me, as well as John Blake, to keep the peace. Kate was waiting for me at the hotel when I got into town. She had closed the deal with Hardman, and all that remained was to go to the bank and pick up the money. Hardman looked at me. Hardman looked at me. Con, one thing I must warn you about. I've heard the talk around town. Everybody has. And the man who will pay over the money will and the man who will pay over the money will be Aaron McDonald. So he's a narrow, disagreeable man, but don't think he does not speak for the town. He does. We'll be talking business, that's all. Hardman glanced over at Tom. Sorry, boy. If it was my daughter, you'd be welcome. But I have no say here. I'm a Kansas City man, just doing business here. Kate had said very little, but I had been keeping an eye on her, and I was worried. Her face was cold, colder than I could ever remember seeing it, unless it was in a bind, where when we were fighting Apaches or Comanches somewhere. Tom Lundy was more like a son to her than a brother. She had reared him, brought him up, almost from babyhood, and she resented his treatment as much as any of the outfit did. An idea came to me. Let's go back to that restaurant, I said. I could do with something to eat. I mean, after we finished at the bank. Nobody said anything, and the three of us went across the dusty street to the bank. Glancing up and down the street, I saw men loitering there, men with coats on, men who at this time of the day would ordinarily not be wearing coats. That's not a good sign. Only John Blake himself stood in front of the bank. He turned squarely toward us and scarcely glanced at me. He lifted his hand to his hat respectfully at Kate Lundy. "Howdy, ma'am. Hope you've had a nice trip up the trail. No more trouble than is to be expected at this time of year, Mr. Blake." She looked at him coolly and then said, "You know, what you told Mr. Dury is correct. We have only 15 men with us, but by now there are at least 20 other outfits starting north from Texas, and the Clement boys are bringing 2 herds this year. The Clements boys had their share of trouble, and they had coped with it." John Blake's big head thrust forward. "Now, Mrs. Lundy, there's no call for us to have trouble. You just keep that boy of yours south of the street." "Why?" Tom spoke for the first time, speaking his voice low. "Why should I stay south of the street? Stay south of the street, Mr. Blake? Am I some sort of savage? Am I an outlaw? By what right do you discriminate against me?" He's got a good point. Tom Lundy had been well taught, and he had read in his books. And when he wished he could talk like it. There was a time when I had spent an hour or two a day with him myself, and in some ways I had a better education than the average man of my time, although my schooling had been short. Kate had spent a lot of time with Tom, more than I had, teaching him to act like a gentleman. She knew how it should be. But those months in England and on the continent that I'd put behind me, they helped. No man had a stranger life than mine, although the West was filled with men from everywhere, from all countries and all walks of life. And often the walks have been very varied, owing to the kind of men we were. John Blake was baffled and worried. He looked at Tom Lundy, and I could see the doubt in his face. John Blake understood tough cowhands, track layers, gamblers, and he knew how to handle them. But Tom Lundy was a nice boy, and Blake recognized him as one. I did not make the law, Blake said. Is it a law? It's a local ordinance, Blake insisted, and I enforce it. No Texas men north of the street. Tom Lundy stood with his feet close together. He stood very straight, and he said politely, Mr. Blake, Con Dury has spoken of you, and I have nothing but respect for you and for your rules. Nevertheless, I shall be north of the street tonight. You may expect me. Well, sir, mad as I was at the boy, I couldn't help admiring, and catching a glimpse of John Blake's startled eyes as we turned away, I knew that John did too. At the bank door, Tom turned back. Mr. Blake, what I shall do tonight I shall do alone, and when I come across the street I shall come alone. I shall come without Con, without the tumbling bee. This dude's got balls of steel. What a man will do for love truly is what keeps the world going around and round. We went inside and walked up to the railing where Dick Hardman was waiting for us. His face was pale, and I thought he looked angry. And then I looked beyond him at the man behind the roll-top desk, and I understood why. Aaron McDonald was a narrow-built man, high-shouldered and thin, and a dry as dust man. And he seemed fleshless. His eyes were deep-set under brushy brows. His cheeks were hollow. He glanced from me to Kate, and nodded briefly, then opened a drawer and took out a sack of gold and began counting out the money. Kate had settled at $23 per head, and it was a nice lot of gold money. And Aaron McDonald was a man who respected money. He watched me put the gold and greenbacks into a sack for Kate, and then he said, Your business here is finished? I've some calls to make, Tom's. I've some calls to make, Tom said quietly. You're welcome, McDonald said. South of the street. Tonight I shall be coming north of the street to call upon your daughter. Aaron McDonald lifted his eyes from his ledgers. They were like ice. My daughter will not be receiving this evening. You are free to do what business you have. Beyond that, you are not welcome. I shall be calling, Tom replied quietly. Mr. McDonald, Hardman interrupted. This is a good lad. I've known Kate Lundy and this boy for years, and I'm not interested in your opinions, Mr. Hardman. I trust you are not planning to order the affairs of my household. He stood up. This is a place of business, and it seems our business has been completed. Kate's back was stiff. For the first time in years, Kate Lundy was angry. Tom, let's go. This is no place for us. Aaron McDonald was a mean man and a cruel one, and he could not forego the final word. That's right, he said. We put up with your kind south of the street. I hope you will permit us to choose whom we entertain north of it. I slapped him. Reaching across the rail, I took him by the scruff of his neck and jerked him bodily toward me. Holy shit. And then I slapped him. My hand is big. It is work hardened and rough, and I slapped him once and then backhanded him across the mouth. Holy shit. Pow, pow. Behind me, I heard John Blake's voice. Con, let him go. I did not turn my head. Are you holding a gun on me? No, I'm asking you. Without a word, I dropped MacDonald back into his chair. Turning, I said, you had better teach him some manners. MacDonald was livid. He leapt from his chair. You goddamn trash. We should have wiped you all out. We should have gone through the South with fire and burned every house to the ground. Suddenly I was smiling. I rested my two hands on the railing and looked at him, and my smile seemed only to increase his fury. Mr. MacDonald, I said quietly, it might interest you to know that I was an officer under General Sheridan. Kate spoke from behind me. Con, come quickly. Turning sharply, I reached her side in two quick strides. Lounging before the bank were Delgado, Red Mike, and Rule Carson. Tom Lundy had stepped out to join them. In a rough half circle facing them, holding shotguns and rifles, were 9 men of the town. Kate, I said, you stay here. No, John Blake interrupted. There'll be no shooting. He stepped past me and went through the door, walking to the curb, where he stood facing the men of the town. There will be no shooting here, he said. Put up your guns. I took Kate Lundy's arm and we went through the door. Our men around us, I escorted her to her rig and helped her in. Delgado went to the hitching rail and got our horses, and one by one, facing them across our saddles, we mounted up. Suddenly I was conscious of Talcott's eyes and glanced down. In my left hand I was holding Kate's sack of gold, and it was heavy. The expression in Talcott's eyes was one that did not appeal to me. Placing the sack beside Kate in the ambulance, I said, all right, let's go. In a tight bunch, we started out of town. The men still stood in the street, but as we neared the end of the street, a man dropped from a roof in plain sight, and then another man led two horses from between the buildings. Todd Malloy and Van Kimberly both carried rifles, and from when they had been situated, could have covered the street at a range of no more than 60 yards. Both of them sat their horses, one on either side of the street, rifles in their hands, watching the men around Talcott. And not a man in that group but now knew they had been si- and not a man in that group but now knew they had been sitting ducks for the last 10 minutes. It was a feeling no man could relish, and never again would any of them feel quite sure that there was not a hidden rifleman someplace close by. We were almost to the end of the street when I heard Kate's exclamation and saw Linda MacDonald standing alone on the boardwalk. She stood before the hardware store, the last building but one in the town, and she carried a neat little parcel in her hands. She looked up as Tom Lundy drew rein before her. She was beautiful. Of that there could be no question, and I could not find it in my heart to blame Tom. Surely he had seen no such girl in the lonely ranches where most of our time was spent. Yet, was I seeing her now through the eyes of John Blake and of Moriah? There was something there, a certain coldness, a tightness of feature, something I did not trust. Your father told me you were not receiving guests tonight, Tom said quietly. She looked up at him, a small smile about her lips. Did I say that? No, but my father is a very hard man, she said, closing her parcel with a sudden, very feminine gesture. I'm not surprised that you are afraid of him. Oh my goodness. She is leading him down the primrose path. He's probably going to fall for it. Hook, line, and sinker. My father is a very hard man, she said, closing her parasol with a sudden, very feminine gesture. And I'm not surprised that you're afraid of him. I'm not afraid of him, Tom replied shortly. I just do not want to be where I just do not want to be where I'm not wanted. Our house, she said, still stands among the cottonwoods at the end of the street. Our house still stands among the cottonwoods at the end of the street. Deliberately, she turned and walked away from him, her shoulders very prim. Mm. It's funny that I just said primrose path and then the author used that word. I swear I've never read this. And that's a old word, but this is a whole book. What did we say yesterday? It was 61 or 64 this was produced. Deliberately, she turned and walked away from him, her shoulders very prim, her hips less so. Mm-mm-mm. Tom turned his horse as if to ride after her, and for the first time he saw me. His cheeks flushed. You don't have to listen, he said irritably. What do you take me for? A Texan alone in a town that dislikes Texans, I said quietly. Look. Across the street, Todd Malloy had reined in his horse. In his hands, he held a Winchester. I'm sorry, Tom said. He fell in beside me, and almost reluctantly, Todd followed. In silence, we rode almost to the herd before Tom spoke. Con, I've got to go over there tonight. I've got to. The worst of it was, I know how he felt. I knew how he felt about the girl and about Aaron McDonald, for McDonald's attitude was an insult and a challenge. Over such things, the fortunes of men are altered. As for me, I was old enough and wise enough in such a situation to ride away. But how could he be at his age? And could I have ridden away if it were Kate back there? Ooh, I think we know who he's in love with. To my one viewer on Rumble, thank you. I'm going to take a little break here for a minute. I'm going to go to the restroom. I encourage you to do the same. Let's have a simultaneous sip here. If anybody listens to this in the future, I hope you are enjoying. We just finished chapter 2 of Louis L'Amour, Kiowa Trail. It's an awesome book. I'm enjoying it. And we're on page 27, chapter 3. We're going to take a little break here, and I will be right back.